Chris Evans Radio. We are back with little Dave, and it is nighttime. It's 8:30 my end. Well, shit, it's almost 9 o'clock my end. So
Yeah,
7 his time. And we're later today because we both had screws in our tire.
yeah. We both, dude, that was the funniest text, dude. I was like, "There's no fucking way he also has a flat." Like,
I was driving home. I was training arms yesterday, and I heard it go in. And it was like,
oh, really?
oh God, yeah. So I got home. By the time I got home, my tire pressure was down to like 29. It's supposed to be at 37.
Yeah,
And luckily, like my dad had bought me an air compressor for my birthday. So I pumped that tire back up, and luckily it held all morning long until I could call the guy that does the tires for me. And he's like, "Yeah, bring it in at 10." And I was like, "I have a podcast at 10." And he's like, "Can you get here at 10?"
yeah, dude. You will actually love this. So I get out of the gym yesterday.
Right.
I get in my car, and then the monitor goes off. My tire's at 18 psi. Supposed to be
Mhm.
at above 32, right?
Right.
And I'm like, "Fuck, okay, cool." There is a gas station like 5 feet away from Butler.
Okay.
I drove there, popped it full of air, and I was like, I'm gonna get home, get my post workout meal in, and then I'm gonna get this sorted.
Yes.
Because I was like, I'm gonna fucking die because I'm fucking starving.
Right. Right.
So I drive it home, go in, eat my food, come back out, tires on the ground, like the all of the air's out. So I'm like, all right, cool. Throw the spare on it and then just drive it to a tire shop. And I left it there to put the key in the key drop.
Right.
And I was like, cool. They open at 8 tomorrow. I'll just give them a call and be like, yo, that's my fucking car out there.
Right. Yeah.
Not much I can do, but like, so they got that fixed pretty fast. They did a great job. They were just as quick as you. Like, it just doesn't matter me getting over there to pick it up.
Right. Yeah.
But the yeah, it was like, all right, cool. Get home, get my food in.
I love that strategy. And 100% what I would have done. So
Yeah,
major respect there. Yeah, listen, I think that is a prime example of how to just like when life throws you a curveball, how to operate around it, because that could have turned it into 4 hours without you eating easily.
yeah.
Um,
And it
and
wouldn't have mattered anyways. It's Sunday. All the tire shops are closed.
valid.
Legit, I was like, cool. They're already shut down.
Right.
I was like, best case scenario, this thing holds air until I can, and when I get home and I can still drive it to the shop.
Yeah.
And then worst case scenario is I throw a spare on it,
Right. Yeah.
which that ended up being like, it's not ever going to be the end of the world. It was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to get food first before I fucking die. you know?
Right. Yeah, it's really funny because I'm like, I drive around with these massive fucking tires on my Jeep. It's supposed to not be able to get penetrated by a screw. And wrong. It literally caught in between the tread of the tire, which was like a gap of like this. I'm like, really?
That sucks. I mean, I sent you a photo of the screw. It was in mine, but my tires didn't stand a chance. It's a sedan, so I don't have knobby tires.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. It was funny because when I pulled it into the guy's shop, like it just happened to be when where I stopped my truck, the screw was pointing straight up. And he's like, "Well, I definitely see where it's at." I'm
Yeah.
like- I was like, "How in the hell does it find that spot?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Dude, my favorite is the when they have like the photos in the wall of the tire shop, and there was like a fucking wrench in someone's tire.
Yes. Yeah.
Just like, how the hell did this happen? Just like like an angle wrench is just shoved in there. It's like, how'd you run over this in that way when that did that?
Right, right, right.
It found a way.
You're right. I was actually so paranoid of driving it because where I had to go was about 9 minutes from my house, and I'm like, please don't explode, please don't explode.
I feel you on that. Yeah, like, 'cause I think it was like a 15-minute drive from
All right,
that gas station to my house, but I was just like keeping my eye on the tire pressure. I
right,
was like, if this gets below 25, I'm just pulling over, but I really want to eat.
right. Yes. And your post-lift meal is so glorious. That'd be horrible not to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so that was why we were later than normal. So some life experience for you guys there. What I thought I text you yesterday, like what I'd love to get into today, Dave, is core training as its entirety. And to me, like that stems like not only like abs, TVA, if you do any oblique work, but that's also to me like circles around to like erectors is how I kind of always thought about that. And I think if we approach this from not only like a bodybuilding perspective, but also from like just general health of living, because I think a lot of times people don't consider their midsection is such a vital role in everything they do in quality of life until you fuck your spine up like I have, that you don't realize the importance of every bit of that musculature in your midsection being as strong as humanly possible. Um, so let's start here. Like when you started and got into like lifting weights, whether that be for wrestling or bodybuilding, how important was like training your abs to you when you first started lifting?
This is actually really funny because when I first started lifting, it was for wrestling,
Uh-huh.
and as soon as I started getting good at squats,
Mhm.
my low back started hurting because I did not brace properly. Like I didn't have the right amount of bracing.
Yeah.
So like I figured that out really quick because it was funny because I was like, oh, I can. I legitimately all I did, I'd do a set of squats, I'd do a set of abs,
Mhm.
and then go back and forth, and it fixed that entire problem.
Like, yep.
You know, also being like 17 was also amazing. But it was like one of those ones like it wasn't like crippling low back, but it was like, why is my low back getting pissed off? And I was like,
Right.
this. And that just goes so far into a lot of things because like we all know like your back is one of the strongest bones sections in your body. Like the chances of it actually being weak, like skeletally, really slim. It's usually something else in your body what's causing that. Like I said, like your abs not being on, your back has to do twice the work. And it's like, if you have to do twice the work at your job, you're going to do it for about a week before you can play.
Yep. So I got really fortunate when I was introduced to the weight room in the eighth grade. Our coach was obsessed with ab training and strength of our abs and lower back. Like it was such a focal point because he believed in that's what tied your upper body to your lower body on the football field.
Yep.
And he's like, that has to be such a powerhouse of a unit, is how he would structure that, right? So, I mean, man, we would do sit-ups and leg throws and plank and tons of deadlifts, rack pulls, hang cleans, power cleans, good mornings. Like it was such ingrained in my brain as an early age. Like that's just part of what I viewed as training. And then, I was obsessed with like Rocky movies. So like, and he's always doing like decline setups and things. So I thought, okay, heck yeah, like I was so obsessed with ab training. And then I mean, listen, I've been fortunate in my life. Like when I was young, I always had good abs. So I thought, oh, it's from all the training I did. Well, when I got into bodybuilding, on an off day from the gym, meaning lifting, we would go do 30 minutes on the elliptical. We would train calves and do abs for 30 minutes, literally abs for 30 minutes. And it was like hanging leg raises, decline setups, leg throws, plank, side plank, like you name an ab exercise, we were doing it. Crunches on a Bosu ball. So like I would just wear my abs out aggressively. And that was all through college and a couple years after. When I got to working at Gold's, like that's when I started really following hardcore bodybuilding like pretty aggressively in terms of breaking down things intellectually. And man, one of the worst articles I ever read was Dexter Jackson was like, if you have abs, you never need to train them. So for the next 5 years, I believed that.
Yeah.
And guess what happened? My abs went from being a strength in terms of like stability of my spine. I still had good abs visually, but they were markedly weaker. And I believe that's what ultimately led to my low back injury doing a rack pull with 5 plates. Um, and I think that that is my warning to most guys. Like what, you had that big quote last week about the mobility work you're not doing is what's holding you back. Like paired with the mobility statement, I think the lack and understanding of how important ab training, TVA, and erector work are, is the second piece of that puzzle. Um,
Yep.
so I gave a little brief rundown of my evolution of, or I guess it was an evolution and then a de-evolution of ab training. In terms of you specifically, as you got bigger and I continually pushed your food more aggressively, that's an area I know you and I have spent a significant amount of time on, is working on you being able to have control of your midsection. So I'd love for you to talk about that process of where, like, we began to work on it, what that felt like, and then how that is now.
The well, I mean, that's the fun part too. Like, I mean, like doing a vacuum, like it may not be Chris Bumstead level, but like you should be able to activate those muscles. And like that was super hard for me up until I was like, cool, I'm gonna shock the shit out of myself. I just threw a doobie on it. I was like, I'm gonna figure out what's in here and how they work
Right.
using a machine. And if I can replicate this, it's like that's gonna help a ton.
Yep.
And then once you have that understanding of bringing that belly button not just in, but like that way,
Yes.
right? Is practicing like when I drive to work, the entire time I'm driving, I'm thinking, I want that belly button on my spine,
Right. Yep.
right? And I'm not gonna be like, I'm not like out of breath trying to do that, but like just sitting there holding that tightness,
Yep.
and that has been like one of the bigger things for me. It just keeping things, mindful of
Yep.
what you're doing. Because I mean, like, that's the reality. If you're eating a lot of fucking food and you have a decent amount of muscle on you, like especially in the off season, like you're gonna have some degree of distension.
Right.
Like we're not dieting. Like we don't. You're not gonna grow eating like a bikini girl,
No. No.
And that's one of the parts of bodybuilding you have to be careful with. Obviously the biggest thing there too is managing digestion.
Right. Yes.
If digestion's not good, how the fuck do you expect your gut to stay in? You
Right.
know, like,
Yep.
and that's for me especially because like in the off season, like so in prior off season, like even like I would say like 4 years ago, I figured this out. But like if I had an off meal, I just ate whatever the fuck I wanted.
Right. Yes.
And then now it's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna eat something I want to eat, but I also want something what isn't gonna fuck up my digestion.
Right.
Because if I do that, in my opinion, it ruins the entire premise of it.
Agreed.
You
Yes.
know, because in the off season, like you're not having a refeed, you're just cheating on your diet.
Yes. Yes.
The and that's the reality of it. Like there's no benefit to a cheat meal in the off season. You're not going to be depleted. There's zero chance of you being depleted.
No. Right.
Like you might be mentally, you might get a little dopamine hit out of it,
Right.
but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But so finding foods what you can eat, what don't fuck you up, and also keep you somewhat on. Like if you going out to eat and realizing what, like, okay, two large pizzas and a quart of ice cream doesn't help my fucking goals. Maybe why don't I just make something at home with like, all right, cool. I'm gonna have bread, tomato sauce, some cheese, and 8 ounces of chicken
Right.
as my fucking pizza.
Right.
You can make something delicious. I'm not saying you have to be a fucking, Roman Fritz and not have a cheat meal for 4 years,
Yes.
but it needs to be in line with your goals.
Yeah. You know, how much I agree with that. Like, I've never felt like a cheat meal in the off season specifically is just should be a time for gluttony because it's going to set you back the following day or meals, right? Like, I think the longer you and I bodybuilding build, like it's food just becomes less seductive. I guess
Yeah,
is how I view that, right? Like, and that's not like, both you and I can appreciate a good meal. Like, I'm not saying we wouldn't go to Five Guys and have an incredible meal or Cheesecake Factory,
yeah,
but it's like we'll have a meal and move on. It isn't like we fantasize about it all week and then eat until we can't move and then get fucked up the next day because we ate so much, right? Like
yeah,
it, I think the longer anyone does this and does it successfully, they realize like, hey, the rest of my life outside of bodybuilding if I want to eat pizza and burgers, I can. But for me, half of a pizza or a whole pizza and a tub of ice cream is just going to mess my stomach up.
Yeah.
Like, even though it may taste good, like, okay, cool. Like, but that's not what I would consider an ideal cheat meal. Like, I will always lean into Chick-fil-A. It digests fast, it's a ton of protein, and it tastes delicious. Like,
Yeah.
I just like that. It doesn't
You know,
sit with me.
and the next day, I mean, you feel like a house. You
Yes.
know,
Oh God.
you're gonna be stronger. You're not worried about shitting your pants in the gym. You
Right.
know,
Right.
or even like waking up and be like, oh man, I'm not hungry for meal one.
Right. Yes.
Like
Yeah.
those are the things what over time is going to ruin. Like that's what's going to mess up your stomach.
Well, agreed. Agreed.
And like if your goal is to keep, especially if you're in the classic division,
Yeah.
like this needs to be paramount into your diet and your lifestyle
Right.
because that's your job. Your job is to have the smallest fucking waist on the planet.
Yes.
You
Yep.
know, genetics and bone structure. I mean, play a role into that, but also, I mean, lifestyle is what bodybuilding is.
Yeah.
It's not just what how you train and what meals you eat. It's like how long you've trained and how long you've eaten those meals.
Yeah. Well,
You know, and that just is the big part of this entire sport.
right. Oh yeah. It's really funny. There. Oh God, why can't I remember the name of that? Anyway, I can't remember the name of the restaurant. Right. They're famous for pizza. I cannot remember the name of it is. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy. Anyways, Angela really wanted to go there. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll go have a couple slices of pizza with you. I literally ate chicken and rice with that.
Yeah,
Like, I had my 8 ounces of chicken, I had 150 grams of rice, had a little bit of olive oil, and then I had two slices of pizza. Now, they're big pieces of pizza, but I didn't eat a large. It's a big difference. Like, and I could
yeah,
still enjoy that meal. I knew that I still hit my protein requirements, and I walked away feeling great from that. Um, there was a point I did want to touch on because I feel like it's at this point it's bodybuilding folklore and people still call it like, oh, you have a GH or slim belly. And I just laugh at that shit, man. Like growth hormone, let me tell you some fun facts here. Anyone in the classic or anyone who has a really small waist all uses growth hormone in the IFBB. Like it's not causing your stomach to be look pregnant. What is causing your stomach to look pregnant is everything we just talked about for the last 10 minutes of eating bullshit in the off season, blowing your stomach out, eating through your abdominal lining to where your stomach hurts, and then not doing ab and TVA work and not being mindful. The amount of guys I've seen and spent time with who just let their gut just hang out all day long, I'm like, how do you expect to get that in if you never suck it in? Like, and I'm not advocating for guys wearing waist trainers 24/7 because I think that's equally shitty for your digestion. You have to get to a point of bodybuilding if your stomach is an issue to where you're always, as you said, being mindful of your belly button and spine being close together. There never should be a point where you feel like your stomach is hanging over your waistline. And I've had guys be lean and that still happens because they don't know how to suck their stomach in. Um, and it takes time, effort. It's not easy. And I think again, to go back to, you were talking about like sucking your belly button in and up. Like if you can't get any movement in your abdominal wall laying flat on your back on the floor, you have a problem. And that is a very weak transverse abdominis. And the only way you're going to rectify that is hard practice in the floor. And then you're going to transition to on all fours and then on your knees and then standing. Or probably leaning over a counter and then standing tall. Like that progression of learning to pull the waistline in and up is the only way you're going to fix it. And listen, I'm guilty of that shit. Like when I do chest pressing, I blow my abs out aggressively, and it's annoying because I see it on video and I'm like, fuck, like I'm get really angry with myself.
I mean, if you talk to Danny, she's probably explained to you why that's a good thing.
Right? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Like being able to push your spine against the back of that pad is your abs doing that.
Right. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
getting in your proper positioning for the press.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a fun topic actually
Yes. Yeah.
because
Agreed.
it abs play a huge role in everything you do,
Right.
you
Yes.
know. So
Agreed.
it's like one of those things with like people with like floating ribs.
Mhm.
That's them not bracing properly
Right.
nine
Right.
times out of 10,
Yes.
you know, and it's like, oh, that's lack of ab control in a
Right.
different way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know what's really funny? Before you and I hit record, that's what we were just talking about. Was I saw that thing where Kuba had posted about doing like a lat isolation warm up, and then you superset that with a plank to get your core stability locked in so that your bracing when you're rowing and pull downs are more dialed in. And I've done that. I did that Friday, I did it today, and it felt incredible. And if you think about that, if you don't know how to brace your midsection, how do you expect to pull or push heavy? You know? And I think that's something that a lot of, especially a lot of guys now that are drifting towards more machine and cable based work, you have to think about that even less. Um, like if you and I sit back with 150 to 180 pound dumbbells, you better learn how to brace real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably one of those phenomenons now because I mean we got people who are super strong with a chest supported row, but they can't bend over with a dumbbell without hurting themselves
Right.
because
Yes.
they don't know how to hip hinge and hold.
Correct.
They don't know how to brace their spine and abs together
Right.
in a bent over position,
No. No.
and that's just like the lost part of bodybuilding
Yes.
because they got really good at because the chest supported row is superior.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it is until you hurt yourself because you don't know how to pick things up off the ground.
Until someone asks you to help move a piece of furniture, right? Like, I think that's also one of my problems with this super isolated community of where everything has to be perfect and everything has to be maximum effort on EMG for your lower lat fibers. And I'm like, yo, like, our body should work as a piece, right? Like, it's one big mechanism. And now, like if you think about these training styles that are coming out, it's all chest supported cable work. It's now you just will need to fly for chest pressing. Soon you watch back squatting will be even more demonized than it already is. It's only a matter of time before they tell you. I saw one today where it said RDLs don't work your hamstring. Hold on, what? Really? I guess you and I's RDLs don't feel the same.
Yeah,
Now, have I been guilty of saying, hey, if you want your hamstrings to hang like from the side, do you need to do seated and lying leg curls? Yes, I've definitely said that. But I've always thought it's been paired with some sort of stretching variation, whether that be with a barbell or dumbbell or Smith machine. Like, I don't think I've ever written a hamstring workout for you that didn't involve some sort of RDL or pull. Um, I think they're vital. And like you said, like if you don't know how to brace your midsection and low back, how do you expect to shove your hips away from the bar? And the answer is you won't be able to. Not without getting hurt. So I think the next logical thing to talk about with that is when do you like to train your abs? Pre-lift, post-lift with cardio at bedtime? What do you like to do?
definitely with cardio in the morning.
Same.
I mean, I legitimately went out of my way. I bought a dip. What's that Roman chair?
Yes. Yep.
So I can do hanging leg raises
Yep. Yep.
at my house.
Yep.
Like because of how important it's just one of those things. It's just like it ties it together so well.
Mhm.
You know, AM cardio, some abs, and some mobility work.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's gonna take you less than an hour,
Yep. Yep.
and that's gonna set up your day so fucking well.
Agreed.
Like versus like that's the problem with so many of these things nowadays is people want to just go. They want to do it all at one time.
Yeah. Agreed.
They got to go do their mobility work, and then their weight training session, and then their cardio, and then their abs, and then it's like I don't want to be at the gym for 3 hours
Right.
or four.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
I want to go in, train hard, and then I want to go home and eat.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
so does your body.
Yeah.
You know the and so breaking things up like yes we you there's not a single job on the planet where you can't do a standing hamstring stretch
Right.
for at least 10 seconds, you know, and
Yeah.
then add that up. Do that 10 times a day for 30 seconds. Tell me you can't do any mobility work.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? You can 100% stand up and touch your toes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you can do something.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't the that one infuriates me. It's like I don't have time for mobility work. It's like I promise you, when you're sitting at your desk, you can take one foot, cross it over your other knee, and push down on it, so you get your, your glute and hip flexor, a little bit of a stretch, and then switch that. Maybe hold it for 5 minutes because you're sitting there anyways.
Right. Yeah. Too logical. I also think like what I love about ab training after cardio and my stomach being empty is I feel like I have a great connection to it.
Yeah,
You know, not that I don't have a good connection, say at the beginning or the end of a bag day, and it is, but I like it first thing in the morning. It's because I also feel that's one of the best times I feel all day is in the morning. So it's like, let's make this a priority because in today's bodybuilding, your abs are beyond important. And if anyone tells you they're not, they haven't been watching the current judging criteria. And I know it's not sexy. I know it's not fun to talk about in the bodybuilding world, but that's something we can learn from the men's physique guys. Like all day long, the importance of how if your midsection looks incredible, it makes your entire physique elevated. Um, and not just from aesthetic standpoint, but as we touched on already, like in terms of a spinal health, in terms of a total body health, it's just good for you. So yeah, I like it in the morning. I'm a big fan of just knocking out 100 reps of abs post cardio, 5 sets of 20, easy work. And then I actually like doing abs at the beginning and end of a back day as it just ties everything together. The bracing before the session and then afterwards, especially if we're going to hammer my erectors, I want to do abs just to loosen my lower back up. So that's more of a rehab tool in that
yeah,
scenario.
exactly.
Right. So again, I don't think you have to get crazy with these exercise selection. Like hanging leg raises, some kind of decline sit up or crunch, like some sort of TVA where you're just tightening down on everything. I think you're good. Like it's literally as simple as that. Do you have any go-to exercises that you find that you really like?
For abs or
Yes, either one. Yeah, abs or low back or both.
the honestly, actually, this is actually kind of funny, but uh, every dumbbell movement I do,
Mhm.
when I put dumbbells back, I do them 1 hour at a time,
Okay.
and I farmer carry it. So I'm
Oh, okay.
training my anti-twisting muscles.
Right.
So I'm basically doing a briefcase walk.
Yeah.
So without like, but it just happens when I'm doing my training.
Yes. Yeah.
But so I put one dumbbell away with my left arm, and then the other one with my right arm, same amount of steps away, and then it's going to happen 4 times in a chest movement, right?
Right. Yeah.
You're going to do all your feeder sets, and you got your top set and your back off set.
Right.
So that's 100% just bracing and anti-rotation.
Yeah.
And it's time efficient.
Yeah. Two for
You're
one.
doing it anyways. You might as well do something for it. You
Correct.
know?
I like it. That's great.
And then the hanging leg raises, and then I really like the banded crunches,
Yes. Yep.
just because like it's fun doing like a motion that has to be explosive.
Right. Yep.
Like I honestly don't know if there's a huge benefit at all to that, but like where it's light at the top and heavy at the bottom, you have to accelerate.
Correct.
Just feels awesome,
Agreed.
and I enjoy it.
I literally have the green long band from Elite slip knotted around my pull-up bar in the basement just for that movement. Like it's good. It's cheap. You can anchor it at your house around a door, anything. Like it's just that's a great movement, like you said. For me, I'm a big fan of hang leg raises. I like the rope reverse crunch on a slight decline. I had you do those for a long time. If you need a developed like thick, chunky abs, like let's say you have really a thin ab wall, that's a big fan of mine. Like they're hard as hell. And what's funny is if I have a guy that's really weak at those, I'll make him do a rest pause set every time he trains back to start the session and beat the number of total reps. And that works really well. And it gives you something to kind of like scoreboard chase too. So
Yeah,
like it makes abs, for me in my mind, it makes it into like a fun game. All right. So let's say last week I got 32 reps, or let's say less than that if you're bad at them. Let's say you got 21 reps total over 3 mini sets. Okay, cool. I have to get at least 22 or more. Find a way to get there. And then the next thing you know, you're like doing 30, doing 40, and you're like, man, I'm really good at these now. And oh, guess what? Now my abs are very developed and my midsection and low back feel a lot healthier.
Yeah.
So, um, we already kind of talked about sets and reps. I said 100 total reps is a good way to try to do that if you want to do it that way. I mean, three sets of 10 or 15, 15 to 20. I don't think there's a magic number. I'll be honest with you. Just make them work hard. Do you feel the
Yeah.
same or?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really like low reps on abs. I've
No,
never thought that was a great idea,
no.
but somewhere north of 12.
Yeah, right. I've also never been big on like getting on a crunch machine and trying to max it out and do a ton of weight on it because then I always
Yeah.
find for me, I start pulling with my legs and arms and it turns into something besides abs, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Because I
Yeah.
mean, I think inevitably
Hip
you and I
flexor
are
crunch.
right. Yes,
You're getting a lat cramp from trying to pull that bar so hard.
right. You know, I think you and I are inevitably so competitive with ourselves that like I'll take on something like that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get better at these every week. And the next thing you know, I'm just like wrenching weight. And I'm like, okay, hey, like, how much of your abs did that versus your like hip flexors and arms? Like, okay, let's rein it back in. Let's drop down to say 60, 70 pounds and make my abs actually do the work. I'm trying to think. Let's transition to lower back because I think a lot of times people just hear low back and they think straight deadlifts. Um, or is there any other exercises you found that really do a great job of not only hitting your erectors, but giving you like serious spinal stability?
Hyperextensions and reverse hypers for sure.
Without a doubt.
Oddly enough, being able to rotate
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's also, I mean, that is going to go help you so much in posing,
Yeah.
because I mean, taking a look at your quarter turns, what are you doing with your spine? Like,
Right. Yeah.
right? If you're stuck here, your upper body can't turn into look good, and then that's really hard to look good because your whole body's facing that way when part of it should face that way.
Yeah. Yep. You know what's interesting about that too is I think everyone finds when they do their quarter turns that one side is tighter than the other, and they never do anything to address it.
Yeah.
Like, I want everyone at home right now to pause this and do a quarter turn on both your right and left side and tell me which one feels better or is easier or more natural. It's
It's probably the one with tighter is probably not the one you wipe your ass with.
correct. Yes.
Well, not just kidding. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that to me again, I think that's where I just logically begin to think about things with our body, right? Or I'm like, okay, if one side's tighter than the other, how do you think that's not going to lead to an injury? You know,
yeah,
like clearly you have imbalance somewhere, imbalance with mobility and imbalance with some level of strength of one of those muscles back there. So then if you don't address that ever, you're either going to have to live with one shitty quarter turn or you're going to have to make it even. And like to me, that's where the fun of programming begins because I think once a body develops to a certain extent, you begin to how I at least look at it from a client perspective, I begin to look at your body through poses as opposed to singular muscle groups. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the things I said to you at the end of last year. I said, I want your back double bicep to be better. I didn't say, oh, your lats need to be better. I want this better on your back shots. No, I said, I want the whole shot to be better.
yeah.
And when you begin to look at a physique that way, after you've but I think the bad thing is like some guys are going to hear me say that, and they're not going to have the base level of muscle to where that's irrelevant. You know what I mean? Like it's above where you're at. So if you don't have what I would consider a base level of muscle, that might be thinking a little bit too technically. Um, but again, that you have to assess that from your own personal situation because for a lot of guys and girls out there, just need to add muscle. That's going to make their back double bicep better, as opposed to someone like you with your development. Like if you look at, say, if you rated your side chest on a scale of 1 to 10 and compared that to where your back double bicep used to be, those numbers would be way off, where they're much closer now. Um, which is why you leveled up this past all season. So yeah. Anything you have in terms of if you had to rank like for your erectors, if we're looking at if you had a guy come to me and said, Dave, like I want to grow my erectors, how would you rank deadlifts, rack pulls, and RDLs on a scale of effectiveness for doing that?
Obviously, I think all of those are going to be top, top tiered ideas.
Correct.
The the limiting factor, I mean, the rack pull, I think has a lot of really good opportunity because you're getting rid of a lot of hamstrings,
Yes.
and that can be a great thing if someone has good hamstrings,
Correct. Yep.
right? If someone's lacking their hamstrings and their low back, definitely RDLs. And
Correct.
then if the entire posterior chain is just like that flat, it needs to be deadlifts.
Correct. Yep. Yep. I,
Uh,
what you
yeah.
just said there was it was nailed, right? Um, and where I was thinking about going next with this is like if your spine is healthy and you need to improve the backside of your body, one of those three is going to be the best option. Everything as you just talked to was flawless on where to select those three lifts, right? The next question I tend to get is, Chris, well, my spine is fragile due to fill in the blank. And to me, that's where you begin to look to install things like reverse hypers, banded hypers, barbell hyperextensions, dumbbell good mornings, all of the or banded good mornings. Another
Getting
great
really
option.
good at a reverse hyper, you
Yep.
know, like not just doing it, but like making it as important as your chest press.
Right. Yep.
That's one. Brad actually said this to me, and it stuck with me really well.
Okay.
But it was like, how many times have you had a bar left on your chest doing bench press?
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Every single person who likes bench press, it's like they can't count that number.
Well,
How many times does that happen in a squat rack?
right. Maybe
Probably this many,
this. Right.
right? The and applying that to the lifts what you suck at.
Right.
Like it's really easy to go in and be like, I'm gonna give as much effort as I can to the things I like doing.
Mhm.
But like if you treat the reverse hyper, like it's your chest press,
Right.
you're gonna get better at it.
Yes.
Same
Yep.
thing, I mean, obviously goes for the squat rack as well,
Yes.
right? But the nice thing about the reverse hyper is the bottom is where you're gonna end up.
Right.
Like, why not go for failure?
Right.
Like,
Yep.
what's the worst that's gonna happen? You're gonna go halfway up the fucking thing
Right.
and then back down?
Yep.
Like there's zero reason to leave anything in the tank there.
Right.
Because the worst thing that's gonna happen is you're not gonna go all the way, like it's just not gonna complete the motion.
Right. Yes. You know, what was really rewarding for me, one of the most rewarding things is when you came in the first time, is I wore you out on that hyper extension and I taught you those high reps. And
Mhm.
it was great for me because John did the same thing to me and broke me on the reverse hyper at American Barbell. And, I always took pleasure in being able to pass on that knowledge to someone else. And like, I know you've done the same for people who you've worked with, where they're like, oh, we're doing reverse hypers. And they don't look at it as either a serious exercise or like, oh, this isn't a lot of weight. Like, we're just going to do 20 reps. And the next thing you know, like, your lower back is fucked in a good way. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's an exercise, I think, sadly, that is not very fashionable for some reason. I know a lot of gyms don't have a legit reverse hyper. I'm very fortunate to have one at Elite that I use weekly. And it's just an exercise that I prayed more people took it serious.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah. And I mean, if lower back tightness or weakness is an issue, there's no safer exercise, in my opinion, for your lower back than that. Like I've trained a lot of people on that piece, and I've never seen someone have an injury on it. Now I'm sure someone's gotten injured out there doing it, but I just hadn't seen it personally. So, um, let me ask you this: with hyper extensions, with a 45-degree hyper, do you like banded or a barbell better, or do you think they're equal, just different?
The I actually, so but the answer to that correctly is the Booty Builder brand makes the one with the cable stack.
Yes. Yeah.
That is the best of both worlds.
Okay. Heck yeah. I've
Because
never
the
used that.
problem with I'm short as hell. So anything if I need to do a barbell, I'm getting like this much range of motion,
Right. Yeah.
right? Which is okay, but like I need to do some weird shit like prop up the thing or figure a way to load it with like not 45s
Yes.
so I get more range.
Yep.
Um, versus bands are awesome because like that top end is just going to be nasty.
Yeah. Agreed.
But at the same time, it's like you're kind of stuck like holding it in your elbows
Right. On your knee
and
sucks. Yeah.
yeah, and or something like that. So like if you have access to it, the one with the cable stack is mint. But I prefer bands just because like the having that kind of the ability to bend fully,
Yes. Yeah.
I really enjoy versus because of the barbell, I'm just gonna hit the ground so I don't get to go all the way to the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
It isn't a bad thing. I mean, I swap through them all the time, but being able to just load that the area where I want it to be, where I'm also safe with a band, is if I had one option, it's probably going to be that if I don't have the nice machine.
Right. You know what's interesting? When I do 45 hypers with a barbell, I view that as like a rack pull. That's what it feels like, where the band simulates. I'm not saying it's a deadlift, don't twist my words. It's more like a full deadlift because I can get a full range of motion with it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and what's really funny is I'd kind of been on like a reverse hyper, barbell hyper kick. And then this past Friday, Chaz and I were at West Main, and all they have there is a GHR. They don't have a reverse hyper or a hyper. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna get a thick band, hook it to the bottom of the GHR and do banded hypers. Man, I woke up Saturday morning and my erectors were tight from the tip of my traps to my glutes. And I mean, you're like, oh, well, you definitely went from a 45-degree angle to parallel to the floor. Yes, that changed. But then I think it was just the band tension at the contraction versus a barbell, which is going to be, let's say, 150 pounds from the time I pick it up to the time I extend it. So I think anyone out there listening, if your gym has a 45-degree hyper and you like it, alternate weeks of band to barbell would probably be a great option or a great place to start. If you aren't strong enough to do a barbell, I suggest you find a way to get that way.
Yeah,
I've seen people try to do it with dumbbells and things, and it's cool, but you need to, you should, in my mind, I'm not saying you're gonna be able to sniff like what you rack pull or deadlift. So don't get me twisted there. That's not an exercise you want to load up with, say, 3 plates and try to pull it, but you should be able to at least get a plate and a couple tens on there, in my mind, um, for a good set of 10 to 15.
yeah.
So, anything you think we've missed as far as like ab training, lower back training? Do you do obliques at all outside
No,
of carries?
that's the carries. No, not really.
Yeah. Occasionally, I'll do some side planking with my body weight if I
Yeah,
feel like my hips are off and my lower back is tight. And that's something a
yeah.
chiropractor suggested to me years ago. She actually had me do this is actually pretty cool. So it was a superset. It was side plank, and then I'd flip to a regular plank, but she had me hook a thick orange Elite FTS band around my hips this way, and then anchor it to something over there. So then it was pulling my hips this way, but I was having to core stabilize it this way.
Mhm.
It felt incredible. And then I would simply just flip over and do side plank and then face the other direction and do a regular plank with the band pulling me the opposite direction. And man, I'll tell you what, like that would have me just pouring sweat. So clearly I had weakness there that she identified, and that was a cool trick that I'd found after I'd had a back injury, after I was like cleared by her to train hard and heavy again. She was like, Chris, I really suggest you doing this combo every other day. And I said, okay, cool. And like literally I did it every other day for 3 months, and I felt great because of it. So that's a little bit of oblique work that I do. I don't do any like those Russian twists. I don't do side bends, none of that mess. So I think that's all things core training that I could dream of talking about. I know it's not really a sexy topic, but
Yeah.
I think that in terms of health and longevity, I wish I'd have taken it more serious in my mid 20s. As opposed to just thinking, oh, like you're undersized, you need to squat, bench, and deadlift until your eyes bleed. I definitely lacked mobility, and then I completely stopped training abs altogether, which was stupid. So please don't make that same mistake and think, oh, well, I have good abs visually. I don't need to train them. That was dumb. So yeah. Any final pieces of advice you want to add before we get off here?
I think we're about settled. I mean, doing it, like actually, you know, applying it to yourself.
Yep.
That's where the magic happens.
Yep. And I think what you said is the best place to end. You have to take it as serious as you do your favorite lift. And if you don't give that same effort, how are you going to expect it to improve at a rapid rate? And I think people to think they can go flop around on the floor doing shitty crunches for 10 minutes and like, oh, that's good. Would you ever dream of doing incline dumbbell presses that lazily? The answer is no. So make your effort match what your goals are, and good things always happen. So until next time, Chris, Dave, we are done.